My name's Randi Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast. At Mastermind Parenting, we're on a mission to support strong-willed kids and the families that love them. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a great episode. It's going to be a great episode. Do you like how hopeful I am?
Yeah, that was great.
It's Randi and Avery, and we are here to talk about Jonathan Haidt's groundbreaking book. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for, I think, over a year, and it's called The Anxious Generation. And we both read it, and we read it. Avery read it. I read it, and then I had Avery read it because I said we got to record a podcast about this.
Reading
book.
feels like cheating. I listened to it.
Well, it's still the same.
It's different to me.
If you listen versus read.
Yeah, it requires less brain power. I can just do it when I'm driving.
Isn't that funny? You don't take credit for it unless you actually read it with your eyes.
It's weird. I won't add a book to my list unless I read it.
Oh, I'd be screwed. I listen to so many books. Okay, so we're going to be talking about this book. And so if you're a parent of a kid or an educator with kids that at some point are going to have their own phones, or maybe, well, what was the statistic about like 40% of 2-year-olds have their own iPads?
Something wild like that.
Yeah. So if you have a kid that's been on any kind of screen and at some point will own their own screen, this is going to be our cliff notes about the book, The Anxious Generation.
Get rid of the iPad.
Don't worry. We are not tech-free people. We love our screens. And what's one of my kids love to say, remember blah, blah, blah. Remember How to Train Your Dragon? We watched that movie so many times. And what do I say when y'all tell me that?
Yeah, you'd say, I've never seen it.
Yeah.
That was you time. That was when I got to do whatever I wanted.
That was my digital babysitter. That's what I used for survival. So just know, just yesterday I was coaching a mom and she was talking about how it was so interesting how she has after school restraint collapse. Basically, which is like she holds it together all day and then her kids come home and she feels like she's on edge. And I said, yeah, can you take a nap? And she was like, absolutely not. I have way too much to do. And so I coached her on this and I prescribed her a nap before her older 2 kids come home from school and her younger kid stick them in front of a movie and take a nap. So we are not screen-free people. I even prescribe things because, I play a parenting doctor on TV. So, so I prescribe plugging your kid in when you need to have a nap, right? When you need to take care of your basic needs. And reading this book, I think I'm so grateful to this guy, Jonathan Haidt, because it's going to be so much easier for all of you when your kids become teenagers. Like, you won't have to feel the way I felt, which is all of the information in here. I knew it. I knew that I didn't want my kids to be on social media. I knew that I didn't want them even to have their own phones. And it was a constant battle, and I broke down, and I let Avery have Instagram in 8th grade, which I think both of us can agree was a mistake. Major mistake. But I was that person. I was that parent that was, all my friends have it. And, I didn't want my kids to feel like the freak. And so I held out and I held out. And then eventually I gave in on certain things. But the good news is because of this book, because this is becoming a mainstream conversation, you're not going to have to be the only one. Your kids aren't going to have to be the only ones. I think this is going to become a movement. I think there's going to be more schools that end up going phone free. Unfortunately, my kids are the ones that the author quotes. What does he say about? Yeah, what does he say?
He says Gen Z is the anxious generation, basically, and Gen Alpha is on their way, but there's still time.
Yeah.
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 It's
Okay.
interesting
Mhm.
to be I've been thinking about this though since I started reading it or listening to it. Um
Reading
is
it, air
reading it.
quotes.
Um that it's interesting because I'm so close to being a teenager in
Mhm.
age that I remember, but I'm such a different person than I was in 8th grade or even high school that I remember exactly how it felt to be the only kid. And it sucked. And now looking back, even though I am still a little bit screwed in terms of like when I got social media and I didn't wait till 16, which is the recommended age that he says, I was the only girl that wasn't like sending inappropriate photos and getting wrapped up in all the stuff. I was a little bit of a late bloomer in a good way because you were able to hold out.
And for 3 years, I heard I'm the only kid in my entire middle school who doesn't have Snapchat.
Yeah, I hounded you.
Hounded. Set
Mm-hmm.
set up like had other people argue the point on your behalf.
Yeah, like made a slideshow presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had cousins, younger cousins who had it. Why? Why, Aunt Randy? Why won't you let Avery have Snapchat? She had older cousins, who could really like tell me how it's not bad and this is the way all the teenagers communicate and that it's like none of us want our kids to feel other. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're making this choice, you're othering your kid in some way.
Right.
And I didn't break down on Snapchat. And for the first time, I want to say it was last week when you finished the book, you said, "Thank you for not allowing me to have Snapchat
And I
too
never,
young."
you waited for Snapchat until I was in high school, and I never abused Snapchat. Like, what I wanted it for was what I used it for, which was like, no one used it iMessage for some reason. Everyone used Snapchat, and I just texted my friends on it. But it never was what other people used it for, what it was created for, basically,
Hmm.
which is like literal child pornography.
Well, and you told me, did you read something or does he talk about it in the book about the developer of Snapchat?
I think you told me about it.
Yeah. She said something like, "Thank you," because you know what? So many people I know went through that they were just too young to have it, and so they were posting on social media their every thought. They were falling into the sending nudes to people. Like they weren't at that stage of development yet where they had like
Critical
that
thinking
sense of,
skills.
yeah, with that sense of discernment of,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe
Yeah, and
this
it's
is going
like Snapchat was like an illusion of this is how it was literally created to be, but like an illusion of safety of you open the picture and it's gone. Well, yeah, you get notified if there's a screenshot, but you can still take a screenshot. Like if someone's sending around your nudes, they probably don't give a shit that you saw that they took a screenshot,
right.
And there was ways to get around it. Like I remember you could like go on airplane mode and take a screenshot and then turn off airplane mode and they wouldn't get a notification. Like there was all sorts of creepy ways to get around it.
Well, and I told you, I said, yeah, I remember like because she was hounding me so much for Snapchat and I researched it and I think just read some article that talked about the guy who developed Snapchat that he was a bad guy. He literally developed it as a way to get more inappropriate and naked pictures of children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, if the developer's a bad guy, this is not good.
Right.
And I was just like, no, I wouldn't give in on that. But I thought, back then, I mean, Instagram got purchased from Facebook. I think he talks about it.
Yeah.
Um,
No, Facebook bought Instagram.
yeah. Well, that's what I said. Instagram got purchased by Facebook. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was maybe in 2012. So if we think about it, so Instagram wasn't what it is now, and at that time it was just like, oh, it's just pictures. There people are just sending pictures and they're doing posts. So I thought Instagram was probably the most innocent. And so finally, when you were 14, when you were in 8th grade, I broke down and I said, okay, fine, you can have Instagram.
And I think I thought that it was the most innocent too, which is like
Mhm.
I remember my thought process because I guess it was so pivotal to me Like, I really remember how I felt about social media. And to me, it was just like, people just go out with their friends and they snap a picture and they post on Instagram. Like, what is wrong with that? I don't understand why that's a problem. And part of the reason I'm glad you waited a little bit longer, not long enough, but a little bit longer, was I, by the time I was 14, I knew what was cringy. And
Mm-hmm.
people's like old Instagram accounts are super weird, and I miss that stage.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that matters so much, like it's not like a horrible digital footprint, but it's just embarrassing. But what I didn't realize was that all of the famous people have Instagram accounts, and that's how I abused it. Was I would search Victoria's Secret models. I would just stare at them and I was like, why don't I look like that? 14-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I not look like a Victoria's Secret angel? And then it gave me an eating disorder. It made me
Mm-hmm.
so conscious of what I was putting into my body. And I was watching their diets leading up to the Victoria's Secret fashion show, and they drank water for 3 days. And I'm like, I need to do that.
Mm. And it's amazing how quickly, like, all the hard work can be undone, because I didn't even let anyone focus on your outer appearance. Like your whole childhood, you were you were sort of unaware. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
I just
like
didn't think about it.
you didn't think about it. It was like anytime that anyone was like, "Oh my gosh, she's so cute." I was like, "Oh, and she loves to read and she can run fast." Like I overdid it. It was
Mm-hmm.
obnoxious because I so didn't want you to be, you to go down that rabbit hole. So I worked so hard to make your worth not about your external beauty, but these algorithms and these platforms are so powerful
Right.
that, I mean, that's what the whole Facebook whistleblowing case was all about. Was they have had teams of psychologists studying human behavior, and once it became about likes and like they have studied us, and and kids who are, at least a decade, maybe more, away from having their brains fully developed,
Mm-hmm.
they, they're so susceptible to being
Right.
manipulated.
And we don't know, like, it's like vaping, you know? We don't know the long term effects, but guess what? I'm the long term effects. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even though I feed my body now, and if I post on Instagram, which is very rare, I turn off the likes and comments so I don't even think about it, because I used to really think about it and think about how many followers I had and my ratio of followers to following and whatever. Even though I don't care about that anymore, I still think about my appearance a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
that's being a woman in society. I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot of other factors other than social media, but it started with social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just and once you started searching for those Victoria's Secret models, I'm sure the algorithm just started
My
feeding you
whole
content.
explore page was just perfect models. I was like a
Mm-hmm.
teenage boy.
Okay, so I'm gonna read a little. I'm gonna read a little bit about, just to give y'all the cliff notes in case you don't read it, but also maybe just to like wet your whistle to get you interested in reading it, because I think this is a really important thing for any parent, and frankly, like I'm so happy Avery read it. I want her younger brother to read it. Like I would love both of her brothers to read it. I just think this is valuable information. And
Mm-hmm.
he takes a strong stance. So he says the reality check. What happened in 2012? Let's start with what we know and why 2012 is such a crucial year in the story. There was a researcher named Jean Twenge, or Jean Twenge, was the first to graph out these large data sets and show that all of a sudden around 2012, there's a hockey stick pattern and all the numbers begin to go up dramatically. We're talking about rates of depression, anxiety, self harm, and suicide. Here are the stark numbers to tell the story. Emergency room visits for self harm among 10 to 14-year-olds rose 188% for girls and 48% for boys. Suicide rates for the same cohort rose 167% for girls and 91% for boys. Boys saw a 161% increase in documented cases of major depression amongst those ages 12 to 17. while girls saw a 145% increase. Among college students, anxiety cases jumped 134% and depression 106%. So the hopeful message, everyone, is that this is not a mystery. Like there's really no argument. It was, like a hockey stick. These numbers increase so dramatically, right? It's like we don't have to really question. This is, the whole talk about mental illness. It's like, think about anyone here who's listening and your middle school years and your teenage years. No one ever is like, or that I know is like, I loved middle school. It's the rare person that even really actually loved being a teenager, loved high school.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's why social issues with kids, like who just sit with at lunch, why it gets, why, you even experience it with Corey when Corey's going through a little bit of a friend situation. And you've said to me, you're like, I'm not going to be able to be a parent. Like, explain how it makes you feel when you know who's.
Yeah, I like can't handle it. I can't handle when there's any part of him that feels discomfort.
Right, or not confident, or feeling dissed by friends, or just all the things we go through during adolescence, because it was so painful when you went through it, right? And I think that's so many parents feel that way. It's like, that whole question of who'd you sit with at lunch? Who'd you play with at recess? Oh, so-and-so's having a party. Are you getting invited? Oh, we didn't get invited. He didn't get invited to be on the select baseball team. Like all those little things that cause.
You don't even realize that it's empathy.
Yeah. It's empathy. It's actually like, I don't want my kids to experience the pain that I experience. And no one's consciously doing this, but it's like such, how we think we're thinking animals, but we're feeling animals. And we're so driven by those feelings and those painful feelings that we don't even realize how much we're hooked into that. So now imagine if you were going through all of those hard feelings during adolescence, and it was so intensified by this, constant barrage of, did that I get the likes? What party was I not included in on? It's just like so in your face. No wonder that 2012 is such the demarcation of social media became a thing for teens. And it went beyond just Facebook. Now all of a sudden it was Instagram, and that really appealed to teens. And then Snapchat came along.
I was just saw, speaking of social media, a girl on TikTok saying she went to this college event and she went by herself, and she was like eating, and there was not enough chairs, so she was standing up eating, and she was like, you know what, this is embarrassing, and I don't know anyone, no one's gonna see this, it's okay. And she talked herself out of her anxiety, and then a video of her standing up and eating by herself got 3 million likes on TikTok. Like, it's no embarrassment is private, every exclusion is public, it's criminal. Like, of course, and there's I'm sure all the social media companies that are trying to drive their addiction home and support their product are saying, it's causation versus correlation, and you don't know what's actually causing depression in these teens, and the climate crisis coincides with this time, and all of these world events. Every generation has dealt with wars and messed up stuff that's happening in the world. Like, it's so obvious, and from my experience and what my friends have experienced, it's direct depression, direct anxiety, straight from these social medias. Like, there's no argument against it.
Well, and we haven't even talked about the addictive aspect of it all.
It's literally a drug.
Right.
And I still feel it.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because everyone wants to blame everything on COVID, but the truth is that kids were connecting, through the video games, through their phones. Like, that is how they were socializing, and that is what came out of COVID. And so maybe that is what intensified things so much, but this was already, Like the train had already left the station. It was already a
I was
problem.
grown by COVID.
Mm-hmm.
COVID, I was 18. Like, and it definitely made things worse. But because I think that if there hadn't been that social, like, media aspect, it could have turned into more like playing outside,
Mm-hmm.
and like there could have been more play.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not because of COVID. All of my issues that stem from social media were way before COVID.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, and I think with Instagram and TikTok reels, like what did Corey just say? Last night we were watching, I'm not even gonna say what he was watching with me. We'll just give the initials. Gigi.
Oh,
Yeah. My 19-year-old son was watching Gilmore Girls with his mom.
it's the
Is
best.
that
It's the best show.
and enjoying it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept seeing him go on his phone, and like he was watching the show and he'd be laughing, and then I'd see him like check something on his phone and then do something on his phone. And I was like, you know, that book that I want you to read that me and Avery just read. Um, I said, they talk about what you're doing right now, using multiple screens at the same time, that like it's actually like the most destructive thing you can do. You're totally messing up your. He goes, "Oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
dopamine maxing." That's what he said.
Baxter clowns me for double screening every time. My boyfriend, when I always do this because I'll watch a show. For some reason, I do this thing where I like to watch shows I've watched many, many, many times because I like to relive the joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously don't need to pay close attention to it because I know exactly what's happening. And so I'll like play a game on my phone. I never like do social media when I'm doing that, but I'll play a game on my phone. And he'll come in, he'll be like, "Are you double screening again?" And it makes me stop. And this book made me more conscious of it, and I've stopped doing it because it's embarrassing, but it's
Yeah,
I'm very guilty of it.
yeah, because when you're double screening, you are dopamine maxing. But I said, and what I said to him, we started laughing. Of course, he said it, and we both started laughing. And I was like, "What was that term you used last night?" And he was like, "Oh, dopamine maxing." And I was like,
He
"Yeah,
has so many good
I
terms.
know." And but I said, but the thing is that it messes up your dopamine, right? All the dopamine maxing, like the scrolling through TikTok reels and going real, like that's why everyone's attention span is that of a gnat, because
Mm-hmm.
it messes with your natural dopamine levels. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit more about what he says, because the thing is, you guys, if he says, like, it's not a mystery. So what, because we know what the problem is, like we actually can work on a solution to the problem. And we don't have to argue. We don't have to like go back and forth and like, this is the facts all point to this place, which is our kids are too plugged in. And you know what he didn't talk about very much here, and I haven't heard it as a part of the conversation. The truth is, I think so many of us, we're so plugged in. The adults are so
Mm-hmm.
plugged in. And so if you're wanting to scroll on your social media, or, you know, communicate with your friends or watch whatever you're watching, I mean, how easy is it to let your kids do the same? Because then your drug of choice, you're able to, you know, shoot up right there with your kids in the room. and
Right.
and so everyone's hooked. And so I think that is a point that not a lot of people, like a lot of parents, get so concerned about their kids being too plugged in, but they're not talking about how plugged in they are.
Right. I was thinking that a lot when when I was listening to the book because um not like I think my generation when we're parents, there's a group hatred of iPad kids. It's very annoying when you walk into a like any sort of establishment, even if the kid's being quiet, you just know Cocomelon is playing on their goddamn iPad and they're just locked in at a table, and it's just like aggravating to see. And so I think I have a feeling my generation will end that, but we're so addicted.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be interesting to see like the almost hypocrisy of my kids aren't allowed to have technology, but I can't get my eyes away
Well,
from the
that's
screen.
the thing. Everybody thinks they're going to be the best parent until they become a parent. And
And
then,
then you want something to distract your kid.
yeah,
Exactly.
and then, I mean, they do what we model. So
Right.
if our dopamine has, or the baseline has been messed up, and so we cannot be present, and so we just want the screen. We're not actually with our kids when we're with them. We're just like trying to sneak the screen. The kids feel that. And so
Mm-hmm.
they feel that lack of presence. And then they're like, when can I watch a show? When can I play a game? When can I do the thing? When can I have my own phone? Because I think they feel that lack of presence. So I don't really think that the cycle will be different or change unless your generation, you know, does the work of unaddicting yourselves.
Right.
That's the only way, because everyone's like, oh, when I have kids, they're never going to talk to me like that. When I have kids, they're going to, and then you have kids and you're stressed out and you just do the things that you said you weren't going to do. I mean, I hear that over
Mm-hmm.
and over and over again.
Right.
So I think that's the only way, is if you guys get to a place where you're like, screw the man who made us addicted to this. We're taking the power back and we're going to put people before technology. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the mantras in our family is people before technology. And you know what? If we wanted our kids to put people before technology, and I got called out on it many a time of not doing that, but like when dad was sneaking had his iPad at the table watching surfing, or his phone watching surfing. Do you remember what I would do to call him
We
out
would
on it?
always watch surfing. What'd you say? I don't
It
remember.
was a song that I sang,
What was it?
Cats in the Cradle.
Oh, yeah.
You don't remember that? Like
I kind of do.
every single time I'd see him with the screen at the table, like I'm not his parent, so I'm not gonna like give him a whole lecture, but I like, it's kind of like Baxter saying, "Oh, two screens," and I would start singing, "Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon." Do a little humming situation.
He'd get all annoyed and shut his iPad.
Yeah, it was just like a little reminder of, how are we going to expect these kids not to bring their phones and their screens to the table, or to put human beings before?
Well, we made that argument. I remember seeing you scroll and being like, well, you're allowed to be on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I'm the mom.
When was that?
um, Sometimes in the car, sometimes I forget when, maybe at the dinner table. Not often,
Yeah, I don't
but
know.
I do remember saying that.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Maybe it's selective memory. Because I remember in the car, like from the time y'all were little, it was before social media or anything. I just made a rule for myself that I wasn't even allowed to have phone calls in the car because I wanted to be present.
Well, I know, I have a core memory of learning how to spell our last name from when you would answer phone calls in the car. Because you'd say Rubensdein.
Right. But was it always in the
But then,
car? Was
but
it
that
just
was
when you were
young.
with me?
I mean, that was I don't remember. I remember in the car I was like, "Oh, I know how to spell our last name."
Right. If I was like,
But I must have been really young because I didn't know how to spell
yeah,
our
because
last
I
name.
think it was like middle elementary school that all of a sudden it just dawned on me. And I was like, they own me from 3 p.m. until 8 p.m. I'm going to, like, I can be on my phone as much as I want, except for when I pick them up until dinner. And I made a conscious effort. And I remember I used to have to put my phone like in a drawer, like in another room. So it was, and I had to break myself of that habit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember one time I was picking Corey up, and he was in fourth grade, and I had a meeting, or, a phone call every Tuesday at, the time that, and I remember him, and I was like, breaking my rule, but it was for a meeting. It was for work, and I was,
Right.
convinced myself that I was so important. And he said when we got home, could you have somebody else pick me up on Tuesdays?
Oh.
And I was like, why? I can pick you up. And he's like, but it's not really, I don't really like having to get in the car and be so quiet. And why don't you just take your call and you could just, maybe I could get a red with Susie, or, you know, there were other options. He knew it. And
Right. And it's the worst to get in the car when you're all excited and want to tell someone about your day and having to be quiet.
right. And in my mind, I
Mm-hmm.
was justifying, I was like, you know, I'm working, I'm trying to do all the things. It's just one day a week, the other days. And I ended up bowing out of that call. And because he totally called me out on it. I've used that example
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times. But I think that's the thing is like we get, you know, reading The Anxious Generation, you know, spoiler alert, it's going to make you anxious. I mean, it made me anxious. It's making a lot of my mom's anxious.
It's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Maybe super anxious. You're kind of man spreading.
oh, I am. I'm on the
Like a
bed.
man on the subway.
I'm on the bed.
um,
Oh, I'm in a different location. I'm recording with a tripod on my
um,
phone. Okay,
yeah.
so let me also give them some background on what Jonathan Haidt calls the perfect storm. He says he tells two interconnected stories. The first is about the decline of the play-based childhood, which began in the 1980s. Oh, I thought that history was really interesting. You
Mm-hmm.
know, just like what happened
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s. And because I grew up then, I was like, wow. So what happened in the 80s and how it accelerated into the 90s. And the second story is about the rise of the phone-based childhood, which began in the late 2000s and accelerated in the early 2010s. So what happened in the 80s and 90s for anybody who grew up then? They started like America's Most Wanted. There was this famous story about Adam Walsh, who was a kid that got abducted. It became mass. There was like missing children's pictures on milk cartons. That was a big thing. So that became this mass hysteria that our kids were not safe. Like if your kids were playing outside, somebody could just come and kidnap them and snatch them up. Or if your kids, you know, were ever out of your sight, like they could be stolen, they could be kidnapped. Um, but the truth of the matter is, there's this woman who he talks about a lot, and her movement's called free range parenting, I think.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
And there was a New York Times article written about her, I remember years ago, which was it I think it was titled like the worst mom in America, because she taught her 7-year-old how to use the subway by himself and let him go on the subway by himself. And they called her the worst mom in America. And so she fought back, and she's now created this whole movement about how even in the 80s and 90s we were living in a safer society than ever before. The statistics do not back up the hysteria. And so it was
Mm-hmm.
much more dangerous in the 40s and in the 50s, and you know, even before that. It was much more dangerous, and kids had so much freedom. And so as our society continues to get safer, but because you know news started there started being news coverage 24/7. CNN came to be. And so what's on the news? Well, it's there's stories of bad shit happening, which causes
Right.
mass hysteria.
It's like recently with all the airplanes, like the news, because it gets clicks, have been pushing, because there was that one really horrible plane crash in DC, and all of a sudden they were like, whoa, this got so much attention. They're all businesses, and so they've pushed every single plane crash that is happening around the world in all these private planes, and like, sorry, most people aren't on those.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden people aren't flying. And it's like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, it's not like all of a sudden all of these planes are failing. It's the same amount as always.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they're giving it more coverage, and so now they're instilling this fear in everyone. Like, it's not actually representative of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
But it's just like the algorithm. If you get fed Victoria's Secret models and diets, and all of a sudden that becomes your familiar, that becomes the norm, and you're like, why don't I look like that? Everyone looks like that. What's wrong with me? It's the same thing. If all of a sudden every time we turn on the TV or on your device and you're getting fed a story about something terrible happening, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to skew your perspective. And so
Right.
that started happening in the 80s and 90s where we thought our kids were unsafe. We thought that they just we thought we needed to take away their freedom. And and so and so he says, you know, it really started back then, right? And he really goes into a lot of child development about how important it is not just for kids to play, but for kids to play unsupervised. Like for
It's my favorite part of the book.
just talk about that.
Well, it was because it was all evolutionary
Uh
based.
huh.
And he talks about how, well, okay, so last night Baxter and I are watching this new show. It's called Department Q, and there's a therapist, and she's advising this guy on his teenage son, and the guy's like, he hates me, and she said, well, he's supposed to hate you because they need to want to leave you. Your kids are supposed to want to go on their own, and so there's all of these different stages of development that now we're missing the mark because we're not letting our kids have the freedom, which includes like leaving the house by yourself. That's an important step. Taking care of other kids,
Mm-hmm.
giving your kids responsibility. That's going to teach them responsibility. How are they supposed to learn responsibility if you're not giving them the
Let me
opportunity?
pause on that. So I remember a story that Michaeline shared with me about when she was with the tribe in Tanzania and how they went for like a hunt. They were just like going as a group, like they would meet in the morning and they would go on a hunt, for a few hours. And there was like a 10-month-old baby and the baby's 4-year-old sibling strapped the baby to his back and he carried the baby on the hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like we can't imagine. And when I tell parents, and I've been telling a lot of them recently who have a lot of sibling rivalry between their kids, like a 7 or an 8-year-old and a 4 or 5-year-old, or a 3 and a 4-year-old and like a 6 to 7-year-old. And I'm like, you need to put the older kid to work. That
Right.
child is your mom's helper. They are reading to their sibling. They are helping put them to bed. And I've had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of moms say, but I want my kids to be able to be kids. And isn't that lazy parenting?
No, that's part of being a kid.
And I'm like, are you kidding? It's not lazy parenting. It's a part of human development. And
Mm-hmm.
like 7 or 8-year-olds, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, they want to be helpful. If they have too much time and they don't have opportunities to be helpful to help take care of their younger siblings, then they're going to make problems because they got too much time on their hands and they want to
Right.
interact with their younger siblings and the younger siblings want to interact with them, and then they end up interacting with each other in a violent way because
Mm-hmm.
we haven't given them direction and a path. Anyway, okay, keep going.
Yeah, I mean that basically it's just basically he talks a lot about how play is really important, how learning consequence is really important. Like if you don't let your kid get hurt, obviously you don't want your kid to crack their head open.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. Um, but if your kid falls out of a tree that they weren't supposed to climb, like they're supposed to push the boundaries of authority. They're supposed to learn what hurts. They're supposed to try things that are too hard for them because how are they going to grow?
Mm-hmm.
And all of this restrictive parenting, it's stunting kids and it's creating a generation of people like me where you're filled with anxiety and you're scared to try new things and you're scared to step outside your comfort zone. And the reason why he brings it up so much is because when you pair that with social media, it's creating really anxious humans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because because what you experience when you do something hard and maybe even a little risky is afterwards that sense of like we're robbing kids that sense of accomplishment, that sense of like
Right.
all the different things, like those are skills that it's like building stress tolerance. When you have a kid
Mm-hmm.
that's just like crying because an assignment's too hard or they're quitting on every single thing that gets too hard, it's because they never had an opportunity to build up that stress tolerance and to do the hard thing and to
Right.
sit with that frustration and that discomfort,
Yeah.
right?
You can't be brave without fear. but people aren't learning that. They're not learning how to be brave. They're just learning the fear and that you can avoid whatever's making you fearful.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll have someone to protect you from whatever's making you fearful instead of confronting it head on. And so now you have this generation of people who, even in like the job sphere, like, yeah, there's not a lot of jobs right now and it's really tough, and people are scared to put themselves out there. They're scared of failure.
Well, and a lot of times they don't have the skills because, you know, I mean, I'm going to get into a little bit more about what he talks about, what really happened in 2012 that's so significant. But if you don't have, like, how do you build mastery at anything? Like, how do you build mastery at communication skills, at, reading someone else's cues, being a person who knows how to read the room and pick up on somebody else's vibe? Well, you got to get those reps in. And if
Mm-hmm.
all you are is on your device, scrolling, 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 not taking any risks, right? Like what is it like to, to make eye contact with a boy that you think is cute or a girl that you think is cute at a party? Like, it's
Right.
vulnerable, it's risky. But if you don't ever have to like build up your stress tolerance because you're just being able to look at that person on a screen and they don't even know if you're looking at them necessarily, right? You don't
Mm-hmm.
even have to like it or heart it, but you can stare at it, you can pick it apart versus just stealing a glance at a party. Like, the
Right.
stealing a glance is an important part of being a human being. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't had, you know, opportunities to go through all these awkward, uncomfortable, do I ask this person, hey, do you want to hang out later? Or, even friends, hey, like being able to go over to a friend and just getting that interaction where you're having to find your brave and to do those things. Well, now all of a sudden you find yourself 10, 15 years later in a job and you don't have interpersonal skills,
Right.
and it
Mm-hmm.
feels it's anxiety provoking to even know how to interact in a meeting or to be part of a team. Or what about when a coworker is not, like, they're difficult to work with, and
Right.
like.
He talked about, he said a lot of the kids, that he took all those polls throughout the book, and he said a lot of kids say they're scared to talk to people because they're scared they're gonna mess up, air
Mhm.
quotes. And it's almost like we now, because it's not normalized to just talk to people and talk to strangers, and there's a fear of strangers, it's like we overthink every single interaction. And I found myself doing this. I do it less because honestly, ever since I started listening to this book, I've been trying to talk to strangers more,
Mhm.
and I have been. But it's like I didn't say that the way I wanted to, or I accidentally combined two words and made a fake word, or I messed up that interaction, and people like really let it get them down
Mhm.
and keep themselves from trying again. They're like, oh, I messed up. I'm never gonna try again. Um, Another thing that was cool when I was listening to this book was, I was listening to it in the car and like when I was cleaning, so I had space in between when I would think about it. And there was one part where he said, not only are we losing interpersonal skills, but we're losing like the trades because people aren't trying things and they're not finding these interests. And I got to look at the difference between me and Baxter in our childhood and the things that he's interested in. And for me, like I grew up in a big city. I definitely played, but not like he did. He grew up in the mountains and was outside all the time and was biking to school, and like he just likes doing a lot of things. Like he likes to fix his bike and he likes to build things, and he got interested in all these trades because he had the experience to learn them.
Mhm.
And it's like people aren't doing that anymore. They're not applying themselves.
And isn't the cell coverage like pretty crappy?
Yeah, they don't have cell phone
Such a
service.
gift.
Mm-hmm.
Such a gift. Okay, so let's talk about what made 2012 so significant. Apple introduced the first iPhones in 2007, and by 2012, about 50% of American adults owned a smartphone. But it wasn't just about the phones themselves, it was about what they enabled. Until, wait, hold on, I just lost my place. Um, Talk amongst yourselves. Until around 2012, we called these things social networking systems. Facebook, Friendster, MySpace. These were all called social networking systems. They were ways to connect people. But then in 2009, that's when you get the retweet button, the like button. So social media itself changes a lot around this time between 2009 and 2011. After that, we call them social media platforms. Think about that distinction for a moment. Would you want your child to grow up with a device that lets her talk to or text her close friends and you? Sure. Or would you rather your child grow up on a social media platform performing for hours a day and watching the performances of others, including a lot of strangers?
Right.
Oh, this is kind of nerve-wracking and anxiety producing data. The data shows up exactly how dramatically childhood changed. In the US, the proportion of young people between the ages of 13 and 17 who have a smartphone has reached 89%, more than doubling over a 6-year period. Moreover, 70% of teenagers use social media multiple times per day, up from a third of teens in 2012. So, in 2009, only about half of teens use social media every day. In 2017, 85% use it daily. That's not a gradual change. That's a complete transformation of how young people spend their time. And we can see the impact on their real world connections. Since 1976, the number of times per week teens go out with friends and without their parents held basically steady for nearly 30 years. In 2004, it slid a bit. Then in 2012, it nosedived. It was just like a black diamond ski slope straight down.
Bummer.
Yeah. I mean, and then it just starts talking about how it's the mental distress increased in not just America, but they talk about how it was also in Canada, it was also in Europe. So this is
Yeah.
global. It's not just us. And some of the things that he talks about in terms of like what are practical solutions, it's schools, the phone-free school revolution, which that was something I was fighting for however long. I remember when you started middle school, everyone had a Mac, everyone had a computer. Remember how you had to wait till your bat mitzvah to get your own computer, and I made you use like the hunky one
The
at
school
school?
computer.
I mean,
Yeah, that sucked.
it sucked. But you know what? And everyone started middle school at your school, and it's like, I mean, obviously, this is not the case for everyone, but you were in a very privileged, culture.
Yeah, and I remember feeling like a brat because I was like, I don't want to ask for a MacBook, but like I felt I was like I need one.
Mm-hmm.
Like the school made us need one, and having to get the school computer, it was a hindrance,
Right. And
and
they
it,
and
and it
they,
got in the way.
I said, I mean, I had to like meet with the school, and I was like, I do not want to give my sixth grader. And so it's like, I didn't want to give you that device. I didn't want to give you that access, but it's the same thing. It was the same thing about phones. It was the same thing about all of it. And they were like, but they'll need that for certain assignments. Like the school, I was like, what is wrong with y'all? And
Mm-hmm.
I was the only one, and you had to like check out their computer every day, and it was a big
And
thing.
the charger was like this big of a block attached to like 9 feet of cord. I had to like get a big backpack
And they
for it.
didn't understand it, and I just kind of stuck to my guns. But then I was like, you know what, fine, I said I just at least wanted you to have some perspective. So I said, you can ask, you can you can get a MacBook for your bat mitzvah present.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all the family members, you can tell all the family members that you would love for all of them to go in on a group gift and whatever. But it was like, I just wanted you to have to wait and to like experience what it was like to not have that device. I mean, I really wanted you to learn without the devices at all, but the schools were like, we require, like, we're a progressive school, and so they required it. And then they did put some rules in place in terms of like, remember how in middle school they made y'all leave your phones in your lockers?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. And if they caught you, you'd get lunch detention.
yeah. But then in high school, you could have your phone everywhere.
Yeah, in class.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't love it, But like everyone was on their phone in class.
Everyone was on their phone. You were all on your screens. How many times did you tell me that you had binged a show on Netflix because school was really boring? Like they didn't,
Well, that was in like Judaics.
but still, they didn't have like why is your network not outfitted in a way that kids can't just watch shows on whatever platform they
And
want to?
literally would sit there and watch TV.
Yeah. Yeah. And y'all knew,
Mm-hmm.
and you were more screen savvy than most of the teachers, so you knew how to change screens and
Yeah, and it was easy to cheat.
mhm.
Like, I remember there was this one test in Judaics where it was like a computer test, and everyone had the study guide pulled up. I personally, that was like the one test I was like, I can't. It was so easy. I was like, why would I cheat? And I did fine, but the people got busted for it, and I wasn't a liar because I was able to say I didn't cheat. But like, it was so easy. It made our learning less productive.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
And
made dumber
what
people.
Jonathan Haidt says is he says one of the most hopeful things he's learned is how quickly things can turn around when we take action. Schools that have implemented phone free policies are seeking remarkable changes, not just in academic performance, but in how kids interact with each other. They're making eye contact again. They're having conversations at lunch. They're playing games, telling jokes, and forming real connections. It's like watching flowers bloom after a long winter. It's like it's like Corey after he went, last summer on that Knowles trip where he was they didn't have any technology. They were camping out in the wilderness for a month. And that was his favorite thing, that he actually, for one whole month, just interacted with other human beings. And I remember the biggest bummer was when it was over, they had like a night back in a lodge. And so they'd formed all these really strong friendships. And he, like one of the guys that was like part of his main little friend squad, he said as soon as that kid got his phone back, he was a different kid. Like basically they didn't hear from him. Like he was like, we had been a little foursome, and the minute that kid got his phone back, we became a threesome.
Damn,
Yeah.
that's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my favorite. I mean, I liked the whole like, have a phone bin and whatever. But one of the whole last hour and a half of the book is solution oriented, and my favorite one was have play spaces for kids even in high school. Like he was like, why are we getting rid of recess?
I remember
And
thinking
I
that in
remember
middle
feeling
school.
that way
Mm-hmm.
when I went to middle school. I was like, no recess. What is
Right.
this?
Where do you play?
Prison?
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, he was like, if you told prisoners that you were limiting their outdoor time or not giving them any outdoor time, they were like, I would kill myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need that time. And it was like, we're not giving our kids time to play outside. They have 30 minutes of lunch where they're shoving their faces full of food as fast as they can so that they can get their little bit of free time. Like, it's so just not how humans are supposed to function.
Mm-hmm.
Cogs in
Mm-hmm.
a machine type of vibe.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, he talks a lot about going from a phone-based or a screen-based childhood back to a play-based childhood. And also knowing that, like, I don't think anyone wants their kids to grow up too fast, but the interesting thing is that they grow up so much faster when they have these devices. Like you've noticed this about like 10-year-old girls who are dressing like the way y'all dressed in high school.
Or now.
Uh-huh.
Or in college, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really dress like I did in college anymore. But yeah, like wearing like the same outfits that I would wear as a 21-year-old
Mm-hmm.
and wearing more makeup than I wear as a 21-year-old, and I love makeup.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's weird and not how little girls, especially little girls, are supposed to be functioning. And it's really honestly sad to see. And another thing that reminded me of is it's crazy how we have this fear and parents have this fear of letting their kids be outside for fear of a predator or something like that. But it's so much more likely that your kid will fall victim to a predator on the internet.
Yeah.
so much more likely, like significantly so.
I mean,
He talks about it.
He talks about how you have to sign or like you just have to click something that you're 13 or older, but like there's no one checking. And the 13 or older, like who determined, like,
Yeah, 13.
yeah. But
It's a whole child.
but didn't you tell me that like porn in Texas, there's something around like you have to be 18 or something?
Yeah, you have to be 18. They've done it well. The only issue with that is that it was legalized for so long that now it's kind of like abortion where it's never going to stop. It's just going to be more dangerous.
Mm.
But if it's, um, basically for porn in Texas and I'm sure some other red states, you have to verify your age, but like I think with like a government ID, and no one wants record of that.
Mm.
And so no one's verifying their age unless you're like, really into porn,
We
which is
we
weird.
didn't even talk about video games. Like it's all the social media stuff is this is really more of a girl issue, but I think we did touch upon, messing up your dopamine and the addictive nature. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting the whole thing with dopamine. It's it's not it's there's the way the algorithm works is like you're not going to see amazing video after amazing video after amazing video. They do it in a way where the dopamine is connected to that anticipatory desire to get to the next amazing video or the next hit on the violent video game or whatever. So
Right.
so there's something about the dopamine build that happens during that, those in between moments.
Yeah. And he talks about your risk factor being in disalignment from video games, where like when you're a kid, the risk you're taking is, going to a party you're not supposed to go to and climbing a tree you're not supposed to, not jumping out of an airplane and shooting 10 guys in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Like how could that not mess you up in some fundamental way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's yeah, and I think the bottom line is that if I had to, I don't know, you can sum it up too, but I would say it's like prolong screen use as long as possible. And when you do need that digital babysitter when your kids are little, like let them watch good old fashioned TV together. Let them have to compromise on a show. Let them watch a movie, together. At least it's a shared experience versus everybody on their own devices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Or even let them go to the movie theater.
yes, let them go to the movie theater. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how, I mean, there's gonna have to be systemic change of or systematic change of like, because he talks a lot about like a kid alone at the park and the mom calls CPS,
Mm-hmm.
or another mom calls CPS because it's illegal now
Mm-hmm.
to let your kid go be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let your kids go do stuff by themselves. It's fine.
Well, it's also like
And
in Japan, it's part of the culture that 3-year-olds go and run an errand like for the family
a
by
lot of Asian
themselves.
countries,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, it gives them a sense of pride and purpose. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I know it seems so. When I've watched footage of those 3-year-olds, like in Tokyo,
So anxiety inducing.
so anxiety inducing. Like,
They're like waiting for the cars to stop whizzing
yes,
by.
and it's like a 3-year-old, it's like a baby.
Literally, it's like a tiny human.
I mean,
And they're just waiting for the light to turn green.
I mean,
Oh my god.
yeah, I know. I know. So all these things sound great in theory, but would I be letting my 3-year-old go and play
Well,
Frogger?
he said, remember he was talking about his own experience with his kid, and he was like, it took us a really long time to even just stop like tracking him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we eventually let him walk to school, and that was really hard. And eventually we stopped following that little red dot.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how can you stop when it's there, when you have it available to you? And he said his big breakthrough was the kid wanted to go watch a night tennis match by himself, and they let him go, and the kid was coming home at like 11 p.m. It was like 12. I keep hearing that.
You heard Hazel. That's Hazel snoring. Can you see her?
um, and it was like 11 p.m. The kid needed to go home. He had taken the subway before, so he was going to take the subway home. Which to me, I'm like, a 12-year-old on the subway, like, but plenty of kids have done it for many years. And the kid's train that he needed wasn't running. And he used his critical thinking skills and he hailed a taxi, which he had never done before, but the dad had taught him how to do. And they were like, and after that, we gave him so much more responsibility because he's proven that if he's in a bind, he can figure it out. And I'm like, and that kid probably felt so proud of himself.
Well, I think he said in the book that like, that really was the demarcation of his kid, like, growing into a very confident person because he
Mm-hmm.
was like, I handled that, and even
Mm-hmm.
though it was scary, and even though I'm sure there were moments that he was probably freaking out there, like, he handled it, and he experienced that sense of accomplishment afterwards.
Right. And they were asleep. Like he couldn't call them for help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they were secretly awake, but they made it clear, like, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a big shift to go from micromanaging and helicoptering and thinking
Mm-hmm.
that is what defines being a good parent. Our job is to keep our kids safe, but
Right.
really, it's like they have to go through risky things and things that don't feel completely safe to develop into adults one day who know how to keep themselves safe.
Right. Yeah. Last story.
Uh-huh.
Um, that story made me think of Baxter. He's been my example for this entire book because I think his parents did it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, when did you learn how to drive stick shift? Because his car is stick. The hardest stick shift you've ever driven. It's impossible. But he said, when I was 16, my mom, we went to go pick up she had a stick shift buggy or something from the car shop. And she dropped me off and she said, figure out how to get it home. And they'd kind of taught him
Uh-huh.
in theory, but he said, I was driving up and the roads over there, they're windy, it's up mountains. When you drive stick on a mountain, you roll backwards, it's scary because you take your foot off the gas. And he said he was stalling in the middle of intersections. It was horrible. And now he's a really good driver.
I mean, Molly, she's kind of a badass.
She's a tough lady.
I mean,
yeah. She's a tough lady.
Tell everyone what my nickname is for them.
Better us.
Uh-huh. They're just better us. I mean,
they are better us.
We went on some air quotes adventurous trips. I mean, we're not like just chilling on a beach or going on a cruise, but it's ridiculous. Like,
I just heard him creep up to the door. I think he's listening.
Oh, little eavesdropper. Better us. Yeah. Our adventurous trips are like, to them, they would be like going on a cruise.
Snooze fest.
Fest. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, you want to come backpacking through the Alps? Like, I don't know if I can. Like, yeah.
Sleeping outside. Are y'all sleeping? Are you sleeping? Are y'all camping?
No, it's hut. It's hut to hut. So we're staying in huts, but it's not going to be easy. And, they're all like trail runners. They like run up mountains every morning. I'm like, oh God.
Hut to hut, I would consider that camping.
It's not. The huts are like nice.
Oh, they are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So closing thoughts about the anxious generation. It's just people before technology. That's the bottom line. That's the mantra I'm going to go to every single time. If y'all remember that, like, we have to model it if we want our kids to grow up and develop and put people before technology. Because when they don't put people before technology, and when we allow the screens and all the evil algorithms to manipulate our brains, our kids' brains, that's why we have a loneliness epidemic. That's why we have mental illness has never been higher than it is now. That's why all the rates of anxiety and depression, not just with our kids, but with adults too.
Right.
And kids learn by what we model. So we can't have all these rules around screens and people and try to teach them people before technology unless we put some of these things into practice for ourselves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And protect your kids from the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Stop protecting them from the things that they need. Protect them from what they easily have access to.
Yeah, protect them be overprotective online all day long.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can be a helicopter parent. Knock yourself
Agreed.
out. Deny access as long as possible and let them go outside and play in the street.
Right. And deal with your kid being angry about it.
Yeah. Uh-oh. He's busting in.
Bye.
Love you. Have a fun
Love you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone say bye to Baxter. All right. All right, everyone, go read the book or read, air quotes, listen to the book like we did. And hope this episode was helpful in some way. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening today, guys. I hope you picked up some tips, tools, maybe some baby steps for creating more balance and boundaries in your life. And I just wanted to let you know, if you want to continue moving the needle forward in creating this for yourself, having a happier household, I want you to go to my website and check out mastermindparenting.com. We have 3 beginning programs, and if you need some accountability and more support, then please look for the one that would be a good fit for you. And as always, we're on all the social channels under Mastermind Parenting. On Instagram, it's mastermind_parenting. And periodically I do pop up on different Instagram lives, Facebook lives, where I give you teaching and coaching, and I love engaging with you live to help you help your strong-willed kids so that they can feel better, because when they feel better, they do better. And I love, love, love getting to know you guys. So thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Super, super appreciative.